If you come to the Philippines, you will get food poisoning. It's as simple as that. Yes, perhaps one or two of you that have traveled here have no issues with their digestive system. However, for most, it's a complete shock to your entire body. Sometimes I think about how here in the Philippines, we are subjected to big nanny deep state government. I spent my last quarter century in the US free of food poisoning. Here in the Philippines, I get it a few times per year, and I dodge it much more often than that. Today, my lunch was takeout chicken that was pink on the inside. I can't begin to count the number of times I've been served dangerous chicken in the Philippines. Today, I was extra cautious in deciding how much to throw out because I already have food poisoning, and compound food poisoning is where I draw the line. That was by Robert Thatch. Think of it this way: in the Philippines, people simply don't care. The wages are very low, the product is very cheap, there's no education, and at the end of the day, they simply have zero fucks to give about your safety. So chances are you will get sick one way or another. I am unaffiliated, says, I cannot count how many times I've been to a restaurant and gone to the restroom just to find there's no running water. So hands aren't being washed, neither is anything else. I avoid restaurants like the plague. Precisely. Even inside of fast food restaurant, chain restaurants, you will see things that will leave you shaking your head. I can't tell you how often I see roaches in restaurants. Number one, I cannot tell you how often there is no water or barely any coming out of the tap that is pressed against the sink itself because they are too cheap to buy a nozzle or a faucet, I should say, that is longer than the actual sink itself. Your hands are rubbing against the sink, there's food crumbs everywhere, there's no soap, and that's just the visible area. Imagine what's going on in the back. Where is the food being stored? How often are there even changing containers? Cross-contamination. Everything else that comes with owning, running, and working in a restaurant is completely ignored in the Philippines. Yep, no paper towels, says Robert. And without getting too nasty, what are the implications of no toilet paper? Which is an issue, even if there's a bidet, of course. That bidet doesn't do anything if there's no toilet paper. All you're doing is splashing it around everywhere, even in the air. Particles live for a long time. Alexander says, food safety isn't taught here, nor is it important. If you tell a local any food containing meat or dairy that's been left out for several hours or heck overnight, that needs to be thrown out, most will give you a horrified look that you're not even thinking of wasting food. Here's things I don't get. Chicken is left out on the counter instead of being put in the fridge because it will lose its crispiness. Bottles of beer are brought inside and outside cold to hot dozens of times before the bottle is sold and served. The mass cooking of food in the morning to serve all day as an 8 to 10 hour later, oftentimes sitting in room temperature, loosely covered, being swarmed by flies without proper heaters, tables of exposed meat sitting roadside, where it soaked up all the fumes, sometimes even next to water, where cars driving by have strong potential to splash the area. Reheating bread on a stove with old brown cooking oil, essentially deep frying days old pandesal that eventually tastes like the fish or chicken that the oil was previously used for. Serving freezer burnt food that is months old. The same rag wipes the table and wipes the floor, keeping vegetables away too long, making it hard to trust smoothie stands because they are usually the dumpster for old fruit and veggies. Serving isa knowing damn well there's poop in it, but as long as you dip it in enough barbecue sauce, discerning man says, it helps to be picky about what you eat and where you eat. I haven't had food poisoning since moving here about 2 years ago. I had food poisoning as a tourist though. I suspect it was the eggs at the breakfast buffet at the hotel I was staying at. The experience caused me to avoid eggs whenever I'm out in general. I only eat eggs at home. I don't touch street food vendors or any restaurants that has off-putting smell of protein gone bad. That's one way, of course, but like I said, there are so many things that you do not see. You can do your absolute best to try and stay safe in the Philippines when it comes to your diet, but at some point, you have no choice. What if you take a vacation, a holiday? What if you go on a trip? What if you want to visit the beach? Any situation like that, What if you get invited somewhere? What if you want to meet someone at a restaurant? There are so many times where you cannot simply cook at home. Also, what if you want to treat yourself to something? You cannot do that because the Philippines will not allow you to. Everything is stressful, and food is the number one reason many people choose neighboring countries such as Thailand or Malaysia, even Vietnam. Although their food is not as great as some other countries, it's still 10 times better than the Philippines. Divine Philippines says, I've never had food poisoning here, but I do know what you mean about pink chicken. When we used to order from Foodpanda several times, we got improperly cooked chicken. Needless to say, my loving wife, as soon as she sees pink, will not only snatch the food from my hands, but I need to be, I guess you're a kid, a child, a monster that cannot tell if a pink chicken is in your hand. However, to believe any food-borne illness here is from chicken is most Filipinos will not eat the slightest pink on pork meat. Have a smoker and do a pork loin at least once or twice a month. The safe temperature for pork. This man goes on to tell me his life story about his pork or his smoker. I got poisoning twice here, says Mango Mandela, both from high-end restaurants, never from the tiny mom-and-pop places. Once immediately before I explained to girlfriend why meat goes in fridge overnight. Once from water at the house immediately before I explained why filling a big blue water container from a tap is a bad idea. Source 6 years boots on the ground. Yes, food poisoning, or just bad food, is not necessarily from the mom and pop shops. Oftentimes it's from restaurants that have great ratings according to Google, or at the so-called 5-star hotel that you're staying at, which can barely pass as a 2-star in any other country or any other standards. No, these issues come from everywhere, not simply the local shops or cheap restaurants or street vendors. It's sad to think you are an Asian country, but most of us would never dream about eating street food. Have you ever had street food in Singapore or Malaysia or the best of places, Thailand? It will have your mouth on the floor, jaw drop with how delicious, fresh, and affordable it is. You know why there's a difference? Because in these countries, they take pride in their food. They have fresh ingredients. They have routine. They have customers. There's always things and items and ingredients being replenished. They keep everything on ice. And even the small shops or carts or whatever can outdo any restaurant in the Philippines, in my opinion. Are there places you can't eat? Sure, you may find one or two here or there, but overall, I promise you, you won't even take the risk. It's simply not worth it. Bilbo 2000 says, yes, I get food poisoning every few months here, and a severe weeks-long case every year here. Been here 4 years, and this is still the case. Certainly restaurants are the culprit, and food delivery makes this even worse. The reality is the hygiene here is absurdly bad, and I have a weak stomach. But causes one about diarrhea for someone else could put me down for a few days. If my friend just feels bad after eating it, I'll get diarrhea. It's a combination. That said, I haven't had a food poisoning in the US in a decade. These are real situations, real stories, real people sharing their experience when it comes to food in the Philippines. Not just me, a so-called hater of this country. These are the realities that you need to be prepared for and be aware of, just in case you too have a weak stomach or simply are human and do not want to tolerate garbage for food. This is today's catfish. How do you go from this to this? The best comment from yesterday's video of how Marcos stole tens of billions of dollars from the Philippines is 250 peso. Thanks from Paulino. Thanks, Paulino. You can support the channel too if you find this information useful. Buy me a super thanks. The best comment that is not a super thank is from Freakazoid. Complains about corruption, elects corrupt officials. Correct. That is it. That's the whole point. These people will continue to make the same mistakes. There are too many bad comments to choose one. Many people will still try to defend the Marcoses. Thanks for watching. God bless.